Published 3:49 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, the 11th of March 2019. Updated 6:32 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, the 11th of March 2019. U.S. plane maker Boeing is facing questions over the safety of one of its key aircraft models today after an Ethiopian Airlines jet crashed, killing 157. The second disaster involving a 737 MAX 8 in just 5 months. All passengers and crew on board the plane, including 36-year-old Briton Joanna Toole, died when it crashed within minutes of takeoff from Addis Ababa yesterday morning. Last October, the same model of plane, operated by Lion Air, crashed in Indonesia, killing 189. China, an important market for Boeing, became the first country to ground the 737 MAX 8 on Monday. Ethiopian Airlines did the same, saying the decision came as an extra safety precaution, while Caribbean carrier Cayman Airways is temporarily grounding 2 of the aircraft, as Ethiopia marked a day of mourning and the search for remains entered a second day. Rescuers said they had recovered the aircraft's black box, which is expected to shed light on the causes of the crash. Boeing said this morning there was no need to issue new guidance to operators of its 737 MAX 8 aircraft based on the information it has gathered from investigations so far. Shares in Boeing slid nearly 10% in early trading today, which if maintained through normal trading hours, would represent the biggest fall in the firm's stock in nearly 2 decades, according to flight tracking websites. Flight ET-302 took off at about 8:39 a.m., but crashed minutes later, having climbed to 8,600 feet and reached a ground speed of 383 knots, 441 miles per hour. Data also revealed the plane's vertical speed, the rate of climb or descent, was unstable, varying from 2,624 feet per minute to minus 1,216 within minutes of departure. U.S. plane maker Boeing is facing questions over the safety of one of its key aircraft models after an Ethiopian Airlines jet crashed, killing 157. The second disaster involving a 737 MAX 8 in just 5 months. Pictured, the crash scene today. Joanna Toole, pictured, was the first British victim to be named. Paying tribute, her father Adrian said she was a very soft and loving person, whose work with the United Nations was not a job but a vocation. Sarah Offred, left, a French-British dual national, has been identified as a victim of the crash along with hospitality company Tamarind Group chief executive Jonathan Seeks, right, Irishman Michael Ryan, pictured, left, who worked for the UN's World Food Programme, and Kenyan-British dual national Joseph Waithaka, right, who used to live in Hull, were also among the 149 passengers killed. China, an important market for Boeing, became the first country to ground the 737 MAX 8 on Monday. Ethiopian Airlines did the same, saying the decision came as an extra safety precaution, while Caribbean carrier Cayman Airways is temporarily grounding 2 of the aircraft. Pictured, wreckage at the crash site today. Rescue teams look on as a digger searches for bodies at the scene of the Ethiopian Airlines Flight ET-302 plane crash this morning. Boeing issued a safety warning last November about its new 737 MAX jets, which could have a fault that causes them to nosedive. The special bulletin sent to operators was about a sensor problem flagged by Indonesian safety officials investigating the crash of a Lion Air 737 that killed 189 people just a week before the memo was sent. Since the 737 MAX was unveiled in 2017, 350 of the jets have been bought, with around a further future 4,761 orders placed. More than 40 airlines around the world use the 737 MAX, which has 4 kinds in the fleet, numbered 7, 8, 9 and 10. Airlines such as Norwegian Air, Air China, TUI, Air Canada, United Airlines, American Airlines, Turkish Airlines, Iceland Air and Fly Dubai use the aircraft, with hundreds in operation around the world. The 8 series, which was involved in the crash in Indonesia, has only been in commercial use since 2017. Boeing said in November that local aviation officials believed pilots may have been given wrong information by the plane's automated systems before the fatal crash. An AOA sensor provides data about the angle at which wind is passing over the wings and tells pilots how much lift a plane is getting. According to a technical log, the Lion airplane, which had only been in service a few months, suffered instrument problems the day before because of an unreliable airspeed reading. The MAX models are relatively new but has already been investigated after problems reported. Pictured, Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 737, stock image. Minutes after takeoff, the plane suddenly nosedived, hitting speeds of 600 miles per hour before slamming into the sea. The warning issued today read, the Indonesian National Transportation Safety Committee has indicated that Lion Air Flight 610 experienced erroneous input from one of its AOA angle of attack sensors. Boeing issued an operations manual bulletin, directing operators to existing flight crew procedures to address circumstances where there is erroneous input from an AOA sensor. As a result of an investigation into the crash, the jet manufacturer is said to be preparing a bulletin to be sent to operators of the 737 jets, warning about faulty cockpit readings that could cause a dive. The notice refers to the angle of attack, which is the angle of the wing relative to oncoming airstream, a measure that indicates if a plane is likely to stall. This angle of attack, which is a calculation of the angle at which the wind is passing over the wings, is used to be determined if a stall is imminent. Inspectors found faults on two other Boeing 737 MAX jets, including one which mirrored a problem reported on board the Lion airplane. The MAX 8 is the latest version of the best-selling commercial jet in history and is operated by scores of airlines around the world, including in the UK, one of 4 varieties of 737 MAX aircraft produced by the U.S. aerospace giant. Boeing says it has taken more than 4,700 orders for the single-aisle family of planes which can carry up to 230 passengers. In Britain, holiday operator TUI Airways has ordered 32 MAX aircraft as part of a major fleet overhaul and took delivery of its first MAX 8 in December. TUI was the first UK-registered airline to receive one of the new Boeing aircraft and plans to roll out its orders over the next 5 years. Only the flight data and cockpit conversation contained in the doomed Ethiopian Airlines aircraft's 2 black boxes can provide tangible evidence of what may have caused the latest accident: technical problems, pilot error, or a combination of factors. The pilot mentioned that he had difficulties and he wants to return. Was given clearance to turn around. Ethiopian Airlines chief executive Tewolde Gebremariam told reporters in Addis Ababa. Weather conditions were good in the Ethiopian capital at the time of the flight. Teal Group expert Richard Obalafia said it was too soon to make any kind of meaningful comment, but another industry expert stressed the similarities between the two incidents. It's the same plane. Like Lion Air, the Ethiopian Airlines accident took place shortly after takeoff and the pilots signaled they were experiencing problems, then the plane crashed. The similarities are clear, the expert added, requesting anonymity to speak freely on the matter. Chinese aviation authorities also noted that similarities between the two deadly incidents, saying operations would only resume after confirming the relevant measures to effectively ensure flight safety. Boeing has delivered 76 of the aircraft to Chinese airlines, and another 104 are on order, according to data from the company's website. But Michel Merluzzo, director of aerospace. Since the Lion Air accident, the 737 MAX has faced growing skepticism from the aviation community. The program had already encountered problems during development. In May 2017, Boeing had halted 737 MAX test flights due to quality concerns with the engine produced by CFM International, a company jointly owned by France's Safran Aircraft Engines and GE Aviation. In late January, 350 of the narrow-body, twin-engine planes were delivered to customers out of 5,011 orders from Boeing. The latest accident is a major blow for Boeing, whose MAX carriers are the latest version of the Boeing 737, its bestseller of all time with more than 10,000 aircraft produced. MAX is a very important program for Boeing in the next decade. It represents 64% of the company's production to 2032, and has significant operational margins, said Merluzzo. It is an essential tool to global transport and trade. He said the next 24 hours are key for Boeing to manage the crisis with both travelers and investors worried about the reliability of its plane. The expert, who requested anonymity, said Boeing will likely face some backlash in the markets, but the damage will likely be limited for the group, whose only significant competitor is Airbus. The plane's future is so important for Boeing that if any technical corrections are needed, it will make them. Following the October 29 incident in Indonesia, the aerospace community raised questions about the lack of information on the plane's anti-stall system. Boeing said on Monday the investigation into the Ethiopian Airlines crash is in its early stages and there is no need to issue new guidance to operators of its 737 MAX 8 aircraft based on the information it has so far. Pictured, rescuers carry a body from the scene today. The scorched remains of a boarding pass could be seen in the wreckage at the crash site this morning, near the town of Bishoftu, southeast of Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Since the 737 MAX was unveiled in 2017, 350 of the jets have been bought, with around a further future 4,761 orders placed. More than 40 airlines around the world use the 737 MAX, which has 4 kinds in the fleet, numbered 7, 8, 9 and 10. Many consider the MAX 8, with a range of 3,550 nautical miles and top speed of 530 miles per hour, the darling of the aviation industry thanks in part to its suitability for the increasingly popular short-haul market. It adds fuel efficiency and a seat capacity of 210 to the workhorse reputation of the existing single-aisle 737. According to CNN, one of the selling points of the MAX range is its LEAP jet engines, which Boeing says redefine the future of efficient and environmentally friendly air travel. This, the firm says, means the 737 MAX is between 10% to 12% more efficient than their predecessors. According to Boeing's website, 16 airlines have taken delivery of the 737 MAX 8. TUI Airways became the first UK airline to receive a Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft in December last year and plans to have a total of 32 in its fleet. There are currently 15 of the aircraft across TUI's 6 European airlines. Other airlines using the model include Air Italy, Silk Air, SpiceJet, Aerolíneas Argentinas and Fly Dubai. Several North American airlines also operate the aircraft. Southwest Airlines flies 31 of the aircraft, while American Airlines and Air Canada each have 24 in their fleet. Thousands more are said to have been ordered by carriers around the world. Southwest Airlines, Ryanair, Fly Dubai, Jet Airways, Norwegian Air Shuttle, and American Airlines are reportedly among airlines that have placed orders for more than 100 of the jets. After investigators said the doomed aircraft had problems with its airspeed indicator and angle of attack (AOA) sensors, Boeing issued a special bulletin telling operators what to do when they face the same situation. An AOA sensor provides data about the angle at which air passes over the wings and tells pilots how much lift a plane is getting. The information can be critical in preventing an aircraft from stalling. As investigations continue today, the father of British UN animal welfare worker Joanna Toole, who died in the disaster, described her as a very soft and loving person, and said, "It's hard to imagine life without her." The 36-year-old was one of the 157 passengers and crew who were killed when the Boeing jet crashed within minutes of takeoff from Addis Ababa yesterday morning. At least 12 passengers, including Ms. Toole, from Exmouth, Devon, were traveling to Nairobi for a UN environment gathering. On Twitter she described herself as an ocean protectionist, lover of yoga and vegan foodie, who was passionate about the earth. Ethiopian Airlines said 7 Britons, 1 Irishman, 18 Canadians and 8 Americans were among 149 passengers and 8 crew killed when the plane came down near the town of Bishoftu. Polar expert Sarah Offrit, a British-French dual national, and former Hull resident Joseph Waithonga were also named as victims. Flight tracking data showed the plane's vertical speed had fluctuated wildly in the last seconds before the crash, though experts say it is too early to say what caused the disaster. Ms. Toole's father Adrian told Sky News, "It's dreadful she won't be able to carry on her work. I don't think I'll ever give up expecting her to ring." He also revealed his daughter kept homing pigeons and pet rats and would travel to the Faroe Islands in a bid to prevent whaling. Mr. Toole said she had flown around the world but added, "Personally I never wanted her to be on a single one of those planes." He said, "Joanna's work was not a job, it was her vocation." She never really wanted to do anything else but work in animal welfare since she was a child. Somehow the work took her into the international sphere, and for the last 15 years she has been working for international animal welfare organizations. That involves a lot of traveling around the world, although personally I never wanted her to be on a single one of those planes. Joanna Toole, pictured, has been named as one of the British victims of the air disaster in Ethiopia. I'm an environmental campaigner myself, so partly it was because of the damage to the environment, but also because it's a dangerous occupation to be flying. Up until now she had been lucky. Joanna was a very soft and loving person. Everybody was very proud of her and the work she did. We're still in a state of shock. Joanna was genuinely one of those people who you never heard a bad word about. She was one of those people who burned the candle at both ends. She never had any doubt that she wanted to work in animal welfare and on the international scene. That meant a lot of travel. It's hard to imagine life without her. One of her UN colleagues, Manuel Berenj, called her a wonderful human being who loved her work with a passion, saying he was so profoundly sad and lost for words at the news of her death. According to her LinkedIn page, she had worked for the UN since 2016, living in Rome, where she recently set up home with her partner. She previously worked at World Animal Protection and Animal Defenders International, after graduating from Anglia Ruskin University in 2004 with a degree in animal behavior and wildlife biology. Wreckage lies at the crash site after the Ethiopian Airlines jet came down within minutes of takeoff on Sunday morning. Rescue workers collect bodies in bags at the crash site of Ethiopian Airlines near Bishoftu following Sunday's air disaster. Members of the search and rescue mission look for dead bodies of passengers at the scene of the Ethiopian Airlines crash. In a blog she wrote when she worked for WAP, she described herself as a keen diver, adding, "I'm committed to the protection of all animals, but the underwater world and the animals within it are my greatest passion." Polar expert Sarah Offred, who had French and British dual nationality, was also killed in the crash. Colleagues paid tribute to her as a true friend and beloved colleague. Words cannot describe the sorrow and despair we feel, her employers at the Norway-based Association of Arctic Expedition Cruise Operators said. Raised in Brittany, the environmental agent was leading AECO's efforts to cut back single-use plastics on Arctic expeditions and coordinating beach cleanups. Another victim, 55-year-old Joseph Waithaka, lived in Hull for more than a decade before returning to his native Kenya in 2015. The BBC reported he had dual Kenyan and British citizenship. He had been visiting his wife and children, who still live in Hull, and was on his way back to Kenya via Ethiopia when he boarded the doomed flight aboard the Boeing 737 MAX 8 jet. Mr. Waithaka worked for the probation service during his time in Hull, and his family said he had helped so many people during his time in England. His son, Ben Kuria, said, "My dad was a private man, but he also had a pastoral heart. He really championed people. He really helped people realize their potential." He would tell stories which would inspire the young people he was helping who were not at a great time in their lives. The graphic shows how the plane's vertical speed fluctuated in the minute before it crashed near Addis Ababa airport. Members of the search and rescue mission look for dead bodies of passengers at the scene of the Ethiopian Airlines disaster. The wreckage of the plane, showing the colors of the Ethiopian flag on the plane's livery, lies at the scene of the crash. As a father, he was very protective and he really wanted us to do well. He supported us and ensured we got stuck into our education. He really rooted for his children. The one Irish victim was named as Engineer Michael Ryan, an employee of the UN's World Food Programme, which said 7 of its staff members had died in the crash, including 2 Italians. The Rome-based aid worker and engineer, known as Mick, was from Lahinch in Cochlear in Ireland's west and was believed to be married with 2 children. Last night, UK Prime Minister Theresa May said she was deeply saddened to hear of the devastating loss of life following the plane crash in Ethiopia. "At this very difficult time, my thoughts are with the families and friends of the British citizens on board and all those affected by this tragic incident," she said. Irish Premier Leo Varadkar said, "Michael was doing life-changing work in Africa with the World Food Programme. Deepest sympathies to family, colleagues and friends." Former U.S. President Barack Obama said on Twitter that he and wife Michelle send our deepest sympathies to all who knew the victims of today's plane crash in Ethiopia. Representatives of the UN's High Commissioner for Refugees and an employee of the World Bank also lost their lives in the disaster. The families of those on the plane have been arriving at special information centers to find out their next steps. Family members of the victims involved in a plane crash reacted at Addis Ababa International Airport Sunday, hours after their loved ones took off. Ethiopian Airlines Group CEO, Mr. Tewolde Mariam, who is pictured at the accident scene. Firefighters spent hours trying to get to the scene. Wreckage lies at the crash site of Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 8, which came down en route to Nairobi as more victims were identified last night. Hospitality company Tamarind Group announced with immense shock and grief that its chief executive, Jonathan Siex, was among the fatalities. Anton Hrnko, an MP for the nationalist Slovak National Party, said he was in deep grief to announce that his wife, Blanca, daughter Michaela and son Martin were among the dead. 3 members of Italian aid group Africa Tremila were on board. The group's president Carlos Spini, his wife Gabriella Vigiani, and treasurer Matteo Ravasio were among the 8 Italians killed. The African Diaspora Youth Forum in Europe said co-chairman Karim Safa had been a passenger on the flight, and had been due to represent them at a meeting with the African Union in Nairobi. Professor Pius Addis-Amni was named as a victim by Benoit Antoine Bacon, the president and vice-chancellor of Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada. Hussein Swale, the former Secretary-General of the Football Kenya Federation, was named as being among the dead by Sofapaka Football Club. Abiodun Olorami Bashua, a retired envoy who served in Iran, Austria and Ivory Coast, was killed, Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Ministry said. Austrian media reported that 3 doctors who were aged between 30 and 40 and worked at hospitals in Linz had died. Save the Children said its Child Protection and Emergencies Advisor Tamarat Mulu Demesi was among the dead. 3 of the Russians on board were tourists Yekaterina Polyakova, Alexander Polyakov and Sergei Vyalikov, the Russian embassy in Ethiopia said. It also emerged last night that U.S. aviation officials had issued an emergency airworthiness directive warning that pilots of Boeing 737-8 and 737-9 planes could have difficulty controlling the airplane because of a problem with one of its systems. A faulty sensor could cause excessive nose-down attitude, significant altitude loss, and possible impact with terrain. The Federal Aviation Administration had warned. Part of the plane lies on the ground near Bishoftu following the crash on Sunday morning in which 157 people were killed. Boeing has said it will send a forensic team out to the crash site. However, it has been a site of activity all day, with dozens of locals crossing on foot and big machinery being driven over. Pictures from the wreckage show people's shoes and burned bags scattered across the ground after the crash. In Ethiopia, a relative reacts as he leaves the information center following the Ethiopian Airlines flight ET-302 plane crash at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport (JKIA) in Nairobi. Debris from the plane is strewn around the area while locals comb the area for any signs of survival from the crash. After the news all on board had died, families cried and talked on the phone at the airport. Families have said they are being told nothing about what has happened. Flight tracking data revealed that the plane's vertical speed, the rate of climb or descent, varied from 2,624 feet per minute to -1,216 within minutes of takeoff. A passenger has spoken of his relief after he missed the doomed Ethiopian Airlines flight. Ahmed Khalid was connecting in Addis Ababa on his way from Dubai to Nairobi, but the first half of his trip was delayed. As a result, he missed the ill-fated flight and boarded a later connection to Kenya. He said passengers were asking the cabin crew what had happened but received little information. Global News reported, upon arrival in Nairobi he was greeted by his equally relieved father, Khalid Bazimber. Passenger Ahmed Khalid left, who missed the doomed Ethiopian Airlines flight ET-302 while connecting from Dubai, meets his father Khalid Bazimber right in Nairobi. According to flight tracking website Flight Radar 24, the plane, which was new and was delivered to the airline last November, had unstable vertical speed shortly after takeoff. Aviation experts described the data as extremely unusual, saying that once a plane has taken off, the vertical speed should rise or remain stable. Expert Sally Gavin said the plane's rapidly fluctuating speed may indicate that the aircraft stalled in the moments before it crashed. She said, "It's the rate of climb or descent, the most critical phase of a flight. Instability at that point, e.g. too slow, could destabilize the aircraft, potentially risking stalling and other hazardous consequences." It might indicate the pilots had difficulty controlling the climb, ascent. An experienced pilot told Mile Online the activity was highly unusual. He said, "A positive number indicates the aircraft is going up. After takeoff you would expect all these numbers to be positive as the aircraft climbed away from the ground, or zero if they are flying level. The small amount of data released so far indicates that after only 1 minute or so of the flight this aircraft started a descent at a rate of up to 1,920 feet per minute down. If data is correct, that is extremely unusual. The data then shows the aircraft going up and down until the data stops. That is why some people are referring to unstable vertical speed. You would not expect a descent unless you were immediately returning, and if that was the case you wouldn't then expect the aircraft to climb again. After takeoff aircraft either climb or fly level for a period then climb again." A woman reacts as she waits for the updated flight information of Ethiopian Airlines Flight ET-302, where her fiancé was on board at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport (JKIA) in Nairobi, Kenya. Family members arrive at Bole International Airport in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. After hearing news of the crash, rescue team walked past collected bodies and bags at the crash site of Ethiopian Airlines near Bishoftu, a town some 60 kilometers southeast of Addis Ababa, the scene of the crash on rural land in Ethiopia. All passengers on board the plane died on Sunday. The airline confirmed the plane had been heading towards Nairobi when it came down in Ethiopia. It was just 31 miles from Addis Ababa Airport. The plane had reportedly traveled for 6 minutes when it came down to the ground. Boeing said it was deeply saddened by news of the crash and would send technical experts to Ethiopia to help investigate the crash. The plane came down near Bishoftu, Ethiopia, 37 miles, 60 kilometers, south of the Addis Ababa. A witness told the BBC it took rescuers until 11 a.m. to arrive. Witness Bekel Gudema said, "The blast and the fire were so strong that we couldn't get near it. Everything is burned down." The pilot had sent out a distress call and was given the all-clear to return, according to the airline's chief executive Tewolde Gebremariem. Senior Captain Yared Getachew had a commendable performance, having completed more than 8,000 hours in the air, the airline said. The plane had flown from Johannesburg to Addis earlier on Sunday morning, and had undergone rigorous testing on February 4. A statement continued, "The plane, a 737 MAX 8, is believed to be a new addition to the EA fleet, having been delivered last year, and is the same model as the Lion airplane which crashed in Indonesia in October." The last night Cayman Airways president Fabian Harms said both of the airline's new MAX 8s will not fly from Monday. Boeing issued a safety warning last November about its new 737 MAX jets, which could have a fault that causes them to nosedive. The MAX 8 planes were launched in 2016 and are used by major airlines all around the world. The state-owned Ethiopian Airlines calls itself Africa's largest carrier and has ambitions of becoming the gateway to the continent. Ethiopian Airlines said they had contacted the victims' families and said the bodies would be returned home once they had been identified. The loved ones of plane passengers heading to Nairobi were waiting for news at the airport yesterday morning. Ethiopian Airlines hopes to become the most prominent airline on the continent. Pictured, a man looks at his phone outside the Ethiopian Airlines offices in downtown Nairobi, Kenya. A Djiboutian national, Hiba El, is comforted by a relative as she waits for details of her loved one that was on board the flight Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport (JKIA) in Nairobi. Passengers wait outside the Bole International Airport, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Families returned to the airport to try and get news of the crash. A flight information board displaying the details of Ethiopian Airlines Flight ET-302 is seen at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. An Ethiopian airport's fire engine rushes to the scene of the crash on Sunday morning. It took them until 11 a.m. to get there. By Joel Adams for Mile Online. The tragic deaths of 157 passengers and crew yesterday, when an Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft crashed within minutes of takeoff in Addis